They saw a connection with Sasquatch, uh, almost like a supernatural element to it. I'm Jessica Jones. Some people know me as the Cryptid Huntress on YouTube and social media and Spaced Out Radio. I am a Bigfoot field researcher, and I'll tell you how I got started and all of that. Around 2011, I joined a Bigfoot field research team, and it just kind of came across my path. I wasn't looking to join a Bigfoot team. Okay, I had gone to a meeting with my mother one night. I grew up really into the paranormal. I mean, I love the paranormal, ghost stories, monsters, aliens, ETs, UFOs, all that stuff. I'd always had a fascination with it since I was a kid, and I had been seeing ghosts and things like that growing up. So I figured if I was seeing ghosts and those were real, Bigfoot was probably real too. And my mom was attending some meetings on Wednesday nights at her friend's house where they would bring in speakers every Wednesday, and these they'd have everything from like survivalists to people who knew about Bitcoin and gold and silver to magicians to psychics to like whatever. And my mom called me one day and said, "Hey, they're going to have some Bigfoot field researchers at Mr. Sam's house. You should come with me." And so I was like, "Okay, cool. I want to see if Bigfoot's real." So I went, and these gentlemen were from up in North Georgia. Okay, I live in Georgia, and they had all sorts of evidence. They took a really cool approach to Bigfooting. Actually, they get out in the field all the time, and they had a connection to, or they saw a connection with Sasquatch. Almost like a supernatural element to it, and a mind, body, spirit type of aspect to Sasquatch, which I thought was really cool. And because it wasn't just a big old monkey primate running around the woods, or a gorilla, or an ape, or something. There was much more to it. And these guys had been out in the field researching Bigfoot for a long time. Okay, so I, of course, was super impressed. They were showing pictures of track lines and cast of footprints, and the typical stuff that Bigfooters give presentations of when they're out doing local events and stuff. So I had questions for these fellas, of course. And I wanted to know, like I said, I want to know if Bigfoot's real. And I was seeing all their evidence. And I raised my hand. This was a tiny little room. There's like 15 people there. Okay. But I said, okay, where's the poop? And like, why have y'all not found a body of a Bigfoot? And they answered my questions. They had some very intelligent responses. And of course, these guys were pretty seasoned survivalists and trackers, human tracking and animal tracking, search and rescue kind of guys, former and current military. A wildlife biologist was one of them. Okay, so they were able to tell me, to answer my questions, and they saw that I was really interested in it, and they actually invited me to go on an expedition with them. And so I thought, well, what better way to find out if Bigfoot's real than to go into the woods with a bunch of strange dudes that I never met before, and go have the full experience. So I was almost a little hesitant. Of course, my friends were kind of making fun of me, like, "What in the world are you doing? Like, why would you do that?" And you don't know these people, but I was like, you know what, this is going to be cool. I mean, they were at Mr. Sam's house. My mom knows them, and these guys are going to be pretty cool. So I went with my gut. And my gut told me to go on the camping trip with these guys. I mean, if nothing else, it would be a fun camping trip, and I'd make some new friends. Okay, so this was in 2011, so it's been a little while, but they put me on their email list and sent me all the information I needed to get some gear together for this trip out into the North Georgia mountains to go Bigfooting. And they'd put a big expedition together. Their team only consisted of 4 guys originally, but they were inviting a whole bunch of extra people to this one like family style expedition. And it turns out they were actually kind of looking to see if they wanted to add some more people to their group. And so they were testing the waters with some new people, and I happened to be one of those apparently. And so I got out there about a month later, I guess. I had gotten a tent. Okay, like I had to like practice and like put all my gear together before I went. I went to my best friend's house. Her husband helped me put my tent up in their backyard, so I wouldn't look like a total idiot when I got out there. And yeah, just I had all my gear. Set up shop basically when I got there to base camp, and started making new friends immediately. And people from all over the country were there. So actually, some pretty big names. I now that I've been in the field for a while, and people that have conferences and stuff like that, they were a lot of the people that are, I don't want to say household names, but in the Bigfooting community, they were all there. And my gosh, I mean, it was like trial by fire. Like the first night that I got there, I told them, I said, I mean, I wasn't living in fear back then, really, and I still don't today. I don't live in fear. I try not to, and I have a very inquisitive mind. And so I told the guys, put me in some weird predicaments. Like, I want to go out there. I want to see this for myself. I'll be bait. Okay, so that's kind of a term that people in the Bigfooting community, we joke around about it. Like, use the girls as bait. They like women, so they'll bring the Sasquatch out, and it's not safe. Okay, it can be a little dangerous, but I kind of said that jokingly, like I'll be bait, but I really meant it too at the same time. I just didn't know what I was getting myself into when I said that, but anyways, went out on an expedition with these guys. So this is, if all the things that happened to me that weekend had not happened, I might not be here today to tell you about my story. Because the first night that I was in the field Bigfooting, and mind you, I'm thinking I'm just Bigfooting. Okay, I'm just there to see if a Bigfoot is real. And we broke off. Like, the big team broke off into smaller teams. Okay, and so I went with the group of men, of fellas, there were about 5 or 6 of us, to a particular area. Okay, where there was an open field, and now we call this field UFO field because we still research this area, but we call it UFO field now. And we got out there, and the guys had some Bigfoot activity the night before, and so, or the couple of days before, they've been having a lot of activity at this field. And so I had like my little backpack with all my gear in it, and my flashlight, my headlamp, and all that stuff. And we got out there, and one of the guys, we were just observing basically. Like, we went out there, we're listening, we're looking around, trying to see if there's any activity. It was a beautiful night, beautiful clear night. And one of the guys was like, Jessica, I dare you to walk up to that tree line up there. And that tree line from the bottom of the hill where the guys were sitting, I'm going to say it's about 100 yards, about a football field is the way I usually describe it. And so I was like, okay, cool, I'll do it. Like, what is like the worst thing that could happen? Okay. So I put on my little backpack, and I was like, okay, well, they said that they would watch me. Okay, so they had their thermal imaging devices, they had their FLIRs, their camera, they had everything. There were several guys that were going to watch me with their night vision to make sure that nothing happened to me. And I thought, well, if something does happen to me, at least they'll know what got me, and then they can tell my mom, when they can call her and let her know that a Bigfoot took me, or a mountain lion or something. So, but anyways, I decided just to suck it up and go up to that tree line. Okay, because here I am wanting to have a Bigfoot experience. I'm going to have a Bigfoot experience, gosh darn it. So I started walking up that field, and I got about halfway up it. I got halfway up the field, up to this tree line, and we're in the mountains, like thick, dense forest mountains in North Georgia. And it was eerie, to say the least. It was very eerie walking up there by myself, but I did feel like I had eyes on me, so I felt relatively safe. I did not have a walkie-talkie on me. I had a walkie-talkie, but the guys weren't using walkie-talkies. They were using their ham radios, and I didn't have a ham radio back then. And so I didn't really have communication with them. as I was walking, and I did not turn on my headlamp or my flashlight. I was walking in the dark. Okay. Because I guess I just prefer walking with no flashlight if I don't have to. So I got halfway up the hill, and I heard one of the guys running, like hardcore, like running at me. I could feel the energy of it. Um, I played sports in college. I played rugby for my college. And so I know what it's like to have somebody running at you to tackle you. Okay. And so that's exactly the feeling that I had. Like somebody, one of the guys was, they were playing a trick on me, and they were going to run and tackle me and scare me. Okay. Maybe not tackle me, but try to scare me. And I thought, man, like that's so not professional. Like whatever they're doing, that's messed up because I'm already kind of scared, you know? And so whatever this was, whoever it was like running kind of, it was almost like in a diagonal. It wasn't like straight from behind me. It was like from the side over from the other. Cause the field is like surrounded by trees, by a tree line. And I'm going up to the very top of the hill that has like a tree line at the very top. So it was almost like something was coming out of the side and like coming at me, and I was kind of bracing for impact, but I kept walking, and I was like, okay, I got them number, like I know what they're doing, you know, and so I kind of like braced myself when whoever it was like got close, and whoever it was swept out the back of my legs and like hit the back of my legs, and it was just like a brush. It wasn't like hard, but I felt it, and they kept running right past me. And so it knocked me off balance, and I kind of jumped in the air a little bit, and I looked over expecting to see one of the guys, and there was nobody there. There was nothing there. There's not a person, not an animal, nothing. But I felt the energy of it. I heard it, and I felt the wind run past as well. So it was like a whoosh right past me. And when I jumped, I kind of jumped in the air. I didn't fall down. I kind of lost my balance a little bit, and I immediately like looked all around to make sure I had not tripped over a log or something, because my rational brain was trying to make sense of like what had just happened. And there was nothing there. I was looking down at the guys. I couldn't really see them because it was pitch black outside. It was so dark, and I couldn't see. But I also didn't want to look like a total baby, like run back down the hill and be all scared or whatever, because I wasn't scared. I was just confused. And so when I established that there were no logs, there was nothing I had tripped over, no branches, no nothing, I just decided to keep walking. And so I kept walking up to the tree line. Well, about the time I got almost to the tree line, somebody did walk up behind me, and it was one of the guys, Craig. And I heard him walking, and I was like, "Are you a human?" Like I screamed it out, like, "Are you a human? Who are you?" And because what had just happened was so odd, you know. So Craig said, "Yeah, it's me." And I kind of, he said that they had seen me kind of throw my arms up in the air a little bit, and that was the distress call. The distress call was like actually me putting my arms way up in the air, and apparently like my arms just kind of flung up a little bit when I got tripped up with whatever hit me. So they didn't know. They wanted to check on me just in case. So he came and checked on me, and I told him what happened. He said they did not see anything in their cameras, and so we walked back down to where it happened, and he inspected the ground. There was nothing there, and so, but he wasn't surprised. Like I thought it was interesting that he had some explanations to what it could have been. And so we went back up. He and I walked back up to that tree line, and we were talking. And he was trying to calm my nerves. He was telling me some funny stories about how he had been down in the swamps down in Florida, and seen the biggest footprint Sasquatch track he'd ever seen. And he's at, I think they call it the Green Swamp, maybe, I can't remember. But he was telling me some funny stories that happened to him, and how he got screamed out of the swamp by a Bigfoot. And as he's telling me that, I'm kind of like, my attention is like drawn to the side of the tree line. And so I just kind of walked over there. I couldn't see what it was, but I just felt drawn to that area. And as he's telling me the story, I'm walking over the tree line, and the guys are down at the bottom of the hill watching me. And one of the guys had his thermal out, and said that as I walked over this tree line to the right side, a Bigfoot stuck its head out from behind a tree and was staring at me. And it stared at me until I walked back off, and then it put its head back behind that tree. So I didn't see it with my own eyes, but he saw it out of his camera. So yeah, so Craig and I walked back down to the group, and that was it for that night. But I thought that was kind of interesting, and it piqued my interest.
Did they see anything on the thermal when you had that brushing on the back of your leg?
They saw nothing. There was nothing. They just saw me kind of jump up in the air and lose my balance a little bit, almost like I was startled, you know. And so no, they did not. They didn't see anything, and so that's why they wanted to come check on me. They sent Craig up there to do a welfare check.
What were some of his thoughts on what that could have been?
Yes, his initial explanation was like, okay, well, we went back and we made sure that nothing was there for me to trip over. Okay, even though I'd already looked, I needed a second opinion, and so he looked. There was nothing there, and he said, "Well, Sasquatch are known to cloak." And there's something called cloaking. I never even heard of that before. Mind you, I'm there looking for a primate running around the woods, okay, that kind of looks human, but super hairy and gigantic. So I wasn't super informed on the supernatural aspect that they could potentially have. And so, but of course, there's other stuff that goes on in the woods too. Now, I've grown up, like I mentioned in the beginning today, I've had a connection to the supernatural world since I was a kid, seeing ghosts, okay, and dead people and stuff like that. So, so he was telling me about the cloaking and how sometimes the juveniles and I'm not saying to this day that that's what that was. Okay, so I just want to get that straight. I don't know what that was, because it could have been just about anything. But he was telling me about how sometimes the juvenile Bigfoots will run up behind you. Maybe they're just really fast, and they're so fast you don't see them. I mean, I don't know. There's so many different things that it could be, but something absolutely did run up behind me that night, and so that was just an option for the most part as to what that could have been.
Well, another question I have, this field was known as the UFO field. Why?
It became known as a UFO field the next night. Okay. And I'll explain that now because this is a great time. Okay. So we got back to base camp, and we knew that there was a lot of activity had gone on that night there. And so the next day we devised a plan where myself and one of the main team members we were going to go up to that field and do like a black ops kind of mission that next night. And we were going to put all of our camo on, and he had a ghillie suit, and we were going to go sit in that tree line where that Bigfoot had peeked its head around the tree. And now he was the gentleman that actually saw the Bigfoot peek its head around the tree. So he and I went to go post up there, get a little spidey hole, okay, in the tree line that night. We were going to go up around 3 o'clock that afternoon, blend into the environment, okay, and pretty much wait until it got dark and sit there and I don't know. I guess it's kind of like what a sniper does. I'm not sure. I'm not in the military, but we were going to go sit out there, and around 9 o'clock that night, our team was actually going to come out. All the people that were there were going to come out and sit up camping chairs and take drums and all sorts of musical instruments, whatever they had out there, and be loud and make a bunch of commotion and act like they were just there kind of organically, like they're just going to come have a party in the middle of this field for no reason. But they were going to come out there and make a bunch of noise. And he and I were going to be hiding in that tree line in hopes that there was like a game trail right up there where we were sitting. We were hoping that a Bigfoot or Bigfoots would walk out and look at them, trying to observe them, and we'd be able to see them, or they'd step on us. We were kind of hoping for that, but that's what the plan was. So we got up there around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and set up shop. We both got beside we sat on each side of a tree, and had all my ghost hunting equipment. I had ghost hunting equipment, and I still do because we use some of that equipment when we're out in the field doing our Bigfoot research. And because a lot of the same phenomenon happens when you're ghost hunting as a versus Bigfooting. So I had like my EVP recorders. I had, what all did I have? K2 meter. Okay. I can't remember what all equipment I had. I had like a temperature gauge and all that kind of stuff too. But so we're out there. I don't remember getting like super tired or anything, but I mean, we were out there for a long time. I think we got back to base camp around 1 o'clock that morning. But when it started to get dark, I had my EVP recorder on my knee, and I had turned it on so I could kind of record, what was going on. And he and I were noticing like our batteries were draining and dying, similar to when you're doing ghost hunting. Sometimes whatever's in the environment will drain your batteries. And so we were noticing around the time it got dark that our equipment started malfunctioning, and our digital equipment, the numbers on mine, like the time and the date, like my time went forward an hour and his went backwards an hour, or vice versa. And we thought, man, that's really odd. And we had to keep changing our batteries and some of our stuff that we had out there. And as it was getting dark, or it got dark, we started noticing these strange lights in the sky. And we're still sitting there waiting, like listening for Bigfoot and activity and footsteps, and just observing, trying to be quiet. And I had that EVP recorder, my little tape recorder thing, didn't have a tape in it, but my digital recorder on my knee. Okay. And these lights were showing up in the sky, and you can hear us talking about this in the recording that I had. And these lights were way up in the sky. They looked like stars or airplanes, but they were moving in triangular patterns. And so we were both observing it, and we noticed it, and we were really paying attention to those. And then a bright light showed up on the side of the mountain beside us. And it was like a big ball of light, and it was moving in a horizontal pattern back and forth from right to left and left to right. And but it was in a straight line. And we were thinking, well, our rational brains, again, we always try to go to our rational brain first. And we're thinking, well, I asked him, I said, is there like a trail over there? Is that a car? And we thought, well, maybe it's a car, some headlights on a car. And then we realized, well, there's no trails that are straight, that would move like this in a straight line. And then I thought, well, maybe it's a hiker carrying a lantern or something. And so, we're going down the list of like anything this light could be. And it's still moving, and it's still moving. And eventually it disappears. But this was like a bright, bright light. And so, well, I'll tell you what it was. So like, I didn't listen to that EVP recorder for a while. Okay. But we knew that there was something weird going on out there. We knew there was something weird. Okay. So let's fast forward. I'm going to go back to that light in just a minute. So we fast forward to like around 9 or 10 o'clock that night. The group came out. They were being loud. They were seeing red lights in the tree line about 10 feet from where my partner and I were sitting. But they thought it was us because we were hiding. They didn't know where we were in the tree line. They just knew we were in the tree line somewhere. And these 2 red lights showed up in the woods. And they thought, well, that maybe we had our red headlamps on or something. They weren't sure what that was. And so everybody just kind of let it go. They're like, oh, that's got to be, Jessica and him up there. And so, needless to say, the Bigfoots never showed up. Okay, we never got any Bigfoot activity that we know of. But there was something very odd going on because amongst all the lights that we had experienced, and we knew that there might be something on that EVP recording, but we didn't know. And I got to tell you, I was a little worried because when we got back to base camp that night, everybody kept saying, Jessica, you're acting weird. You're acting odd. And I told them, I was like, y'all don't even know me. How do you know I'm acting weird? And I'm just tired. I didn't eat all day, and that kind of stuff. And so anyways, it was still fun no matter what. It was still a cool experience. Um, but everybody on that team was like, okay, something more has happened. We just can't put our finger on it. So it took me about a week to listen to that recording after I got home. And I actually had the head of the team meet me to listen to the recording together. And I'm glad that he did, because I was a little freaked out by some of the stuff that I heard on that recording. And there's, from my experience being out there doing Bigfooting, um, from the very first night, I realized that there's way more to this Bigfoot stuff than just like the monkey in the woods. Okay, there's something more to it, and there's a lot of other phenomenon involved in the Bigfooting, in the field when we're out there researching. So the head of my team listened to that recording with me, and around the time that our equipment started malfunctioning was around the time that light showed up, and that we were seeing it on the side of that mountain. And when you listen to the recording, it sounded like bottle rockets were being shot off all around us, like pew, 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 all around us. And he and I had not heard that with our own ears. So that was a little disturbing, to say the least. And you can hear us discussing about all the other lights that we were seeing, and it seemed to be like UFOs, basically, is what we were seeing. Well, after we heard that recording, it erased itself. Right after we hit stop on it, the entire recording deleted itself. And so that's why I was so glad the head of the team heard it with me, because I would have been the only one to hear that. I don't know if everybody would have believed me. I think they would have, but it was just anomalous, I guess you could say. So of course, the head of my team, he's an amazing researcher. He is trained in what they call remote viewing, something that our military's used for a long time, and he actually suggested to all of us after all this happened. He said, well, we had our suspicions with the Bigfooting that they've been out there so long. There was something more to them, something potentially supernatural, even potentially connected to ETs and stuff, but they weren't sure. But after that weekend, it all became apparent that there was more to this to research than just Bigfoots, because they already had established that Bigfoots were real and they're out there in the field. So I guess he decided it was kind of time to take it a step further and look into other stuff other than just Bigfoot out there. And so he suggested that everybody on the team, and by the way, they did ask me to join their team after that weekend. I was one of the two people they asked to join after that weekend. And he suggested that we all start researching alien abductions. So it took like a whole other turn. When I was expecting to go out there and look for Bigfoot, I'm being told that I could have possibly been abducted by aliens or something. It was shocking. It was very shocking when that happened. So,
I've heard a lot of the UFO potentially connected with Bigfoot. And a lot of people do just have the flesh and blood experience with them without all of these other things. You were probably right place, right time for the whole UFO connection to be there. But you never did really actually see a Bigfoot that weekend, right?
No, I never saw a Bigfoot that weekend. No, other people did. They had several sightings that weekend because there were a lot of people there, and we were all divided up over this entire region, But I had some more. It was more like supernatural kind of stuff happen to me. So and plus the Bigfoot that I didn't see, it was right in front of me, and the other guy saw it, but I didn't. So, because I had none of that. I had no thermal imaging cameras. I had nothing other than my tent and my boots and some gear. So back then it was just me testing the waters to see if Bigfoot was real.
So as you joined this team, did you go out with them periodically and look for Bigfoot, or were there more UFO activities? Where did you go? What did you do?
Yeah. Oh no, I'm still on their team today. Like we're still very active. I'm on 3 different field research teams at this point, and we research all over the South. But we do have some areas that we go, and it is based on Bigfoot field research. Yeah, and so we go out there with an open mind. because we've experienced so many other phenomenon out there. We have established that Bigfoots are out there. We're kind of like on, we're almost like uh, communicating with them at this point and stuff like that. Like it's not just like we're looking for them because we already know they're out there. It's more of almost like communicating and establishing that they're there, and then we're looking into other aspects that are associated with Bigfoot.
What would those aspects be?
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to go down the rabbit hole now, okay, because we've got the UFOs, okay. So we got the UFOs. We have light beings that we have encountered. We've encountered orbs. Orbs are a mainstay. Okay, those are out in the field almost every single time we're out there. We have orbs, and it's not just like one type of orb. We're seeing orbs. Like one of the last times I was out there, I saw an orange orb in the tree line, and as it whizzed through the tree line, the light stopped, and there was a huff and a growl. And I thought it could potentially have been a bear. And so I turned on my flashlight and looked to make sure there was not a bear right in front of me. It's definitely Sasquatchy. Okay. But we're seeing orbs that seem to be manifesting into Sasquatch and ETs and all sorts of whatever's out there. There's also like orbs like you'd see in a ghost picture, like when people that are ghost hunting take pictures, or even if you're just hanging out with your family and you snap a picture and there are orbs in there. Okay. We have those. I had one that floated into my tent one night when I was out there, and I was laying in my tent. You know, it's not always easy to sleep out there in some of the areas that we go and research. And because there's things throwing rocks and acorns at your tent all night and screaming at you, and it can get a little dicey out there. So either I'm dead asleep right when I go in my tent because I'm exhausted, or I stay up because I can't sleep because there's stuff walking around my tent all night. But yeah, I was laying in my tent one night, and we put cameras around base camp a lot of times, and just to see if there's any activity while we're sleeping or if something happens, we'd like to know what that was. So we had a camera pointed towards my tent, and at this particular camp, my tent was a little closer to the other guys because it was a smaller camp, and it's one of the more creepy places. So we like to kind of stay closer together at this one, in proximity to each other. And so in the video, you can see an orb go into my tent, and it was about the size of a softball, I guess. Went into my tent, and I was awake when it went in there. So I watched it, and it came and it floated around inside, and I had a huge tent. Okay. And I like to put like my cot in the middle of this tent so no Bigfoot will poke its finger in and hit me, you know. I like to be in the middle. So like I've mentally, I feel like they can't touch me if I'm in the middle of my tent. But anyways, they could just like crash through my tent if they wanted. But this orb came into my tent, and it just kind of sat there, and it was observing me. Like I felt like it was actually observing me. And then I kind of was like, all right, what are you doing here? And it went out of my tent, and it went, you could see in the video, it goes into the tent next to me. So what are these orbs? You know, that's something that we're trying to look into as well. I mean, we even have a video. One of my good friends has a video of orbs in somebody's like CCTV camera in their backyard. And these orbs fly past the camera in this backyard, and they look like solid metal orbs. And they land in these people's backyard, and they turn into like ETs. And they start running around, and they turn back into orbs, and they shoot past the camera again. So we've seen some weird stuff.
When you say they turn into ETs, what do they look like?
They look like the typical gray aliens that you see on TV or any kind of internet, video of what aliens look like. They look like typical aliens with like the big head, the big eyes, skinny bodies, like really kind of skinny bodies with long arms and feet, and they don't move like anything I've ever seen before either. I've actually had up close and personal contact with ETs since I've been doing this field research twice. Okay. 2 times, 3 different beings of whatever sort they are. They look like gray aliens. 2 of them did, but they look like that. And they don't move like humans or any kind of animal that I've even seen, they have weird movements and stuff. So in that video, when I see videos now, like since I've had the experience myself, I can tell you if I'm looking at something that's actually an ET, what I believe to be an ET, it's easier for me to spot it, the reals and what might not be real. So yeah, my reality is so wild at this point.
How much do you think that, because like you said, you grew up, pretty open-minded with all of this
Hmm.
research and all of these things, and it's like I I've done research in this field for a long time myself. Not the Bigfoot, but the other, a lot of the unusual phenomena. And it seems like there are some people that just naturally can see a lot of these energies, and other people that just don't see it well. What do you think about
Yes.
that?
100% accurate. Yes. Okay, so my team is very switched on psychically. Okay, everybody on my team is trained in remote viewing. Okay, and that's what our government used to use, and I think they still use it for psychic spying. Okay, and so we're all very switched on psychically. That is a big factor in I believe why we get so much strange activity out in the field, because when people are on a particular frequency, and this is not just my opinion, we see this every time we go out in the field. People that are on a higher vibrational frequency, let's just say, and in tune and attune to the paranormal and to their psychic ability. I think psychic abilities have a lot to do with some of this stuff. And some people are born with this. Everybody's born with psychic abilities, but it's just a matter of tuning into them. Um, you're like a beacon of light out in the woods, and even at your house. That's why some people are able to have experiences with ghosts and see dead people that aren't supposed to be here, because you are on that frequency. And I've been on that frequency just about my whole life. My son is on that frequency. He's only 9, and when he was, I'm going to say about 5 years ago, no, let's say about 4 years ago, I had been out in the field. My team researches a place we call the Meadow, and it's the head of my team, Trey Hudson, wrote a book. It's called The Meadow Project: Explorations into the South Skinwalker Ranch, and that's some of my team's research. And it's an active area. We still research that. And I came home from a weekend of being out there, and my son had stayed at the house with my mother. And when I got home, it was that day. He was looking really cute. His father, who I was married to at the time, was making a video of my son on my elliptical machine, and he was just having fun playing on the elliptical machine. And his dad was videoing it, and suddenly orbs showed up and started dancing around my son's head. And my husband at the time, he said, "Hey, come in here. You got to see this. You're going to love this." And I walked into the living. It was in the living room. Yes, I have an elliptical machine in my living room. I used to, and so fancy. And my son was on the elliptical. He's got his camera phone on, and I could see in the screen. Well, he was watching this through his screen on his phone. And my son is watching these orbs with his eyes, and he's pointing around to these orbs and following them with his finger. And he said, "Mom, ball, ball, mom, ball." And I saw, and I was so confused. I thought I was seeing moths or some kind of bug. And so I said, "What? Are you seeing bugs?" He goes, "No, mom, ball, ball." And then I realized there were two orbs of light floating around my son's head, dancing all around him and up into the ceiling and all around. And his dad was filming it, but his dad could not see them with his own eyes whatsoever. But he could see them through his phone, the screen on his phone. And so my son and I are watching them. My son clearly sees them with his own eyes. I clearly see them with my own eyes. His dad could not see them at all with his own eyes. And one of the balls shot towards the phone and turned his phone off. And we have the video of that. Okay, so that tells me it's actually a great piece of research, right? Because it showed me from there on out that not everybody is on that frequency to see what I see. Okay, and so
Exactly.
that explains why a lot of people don't have experiences like a lot of us have. Um, That's it. It's all about energy, frequency, and vibration. Okay, and so if you're on that vibe, and I'm not saying you got to be high vibe, all the time. You just have to be on that frequency, just like a radio, like tuning a radio. You got to get on that station where this phenomenon is, and that's when you experience it.
You can't take the experience you're out of the experience itself, or judge an experience based solely upon what you personally perceive, because other people may not be perceiving it the same way. Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's good. It's good to compare those experiences, to know that that was an excellent moment that you had, to be able to identify that two people could see it, one couldn't, and then for it to turn off the phone. Could you see it actually go to the phone to make that disconnect?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's the orb shoots right into the camera. Yeah. It's a very interesting video.
Do you think those orbs are actually Bigfoot that goes back and forth between them? And do you have any evidence of that beyond just your speculation?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the beautiful thing about it. I have no idea. I have no clue, and it could just all be speculative. Some people do think that the orbs could be like a non-corporeal type of, vessel, or just like consciousness, basically, that manifests into a Bigfoot. But I don't know. I've never seen it happen before, so I can't say definitively that's what that is. So I don't know at all. I don't claim to have any answers, by the way. I have no answers. The more that I'm out there in the field, the less that I know. I know that sounds really weird, but I thought I had answers at one point, and the more I'm out there, the less I know. But yeah, I have never seen a Bigfoot manifest into an orb, or manifest into a Bigfoot. I mean, vice versa. Now, I do have an interesting story about a portal, though. Okay, so my team has encountered a portal that we did document, and we sent people inside of it, and they did disappear, and that is on video, and it's not been released to the public yet, but we do talk about it pretty often, and the video has been shown at conferences and things like that. But the head of our team, he may or may not have signed a contract with the documentary company or something, maybe. So I don't know what's going on with it right now. So it has not been released yet.
Is that location related, as far as where the portal is, or is that portal something that is transferred around to different places?
Oh, that's a good question too. Okay, because in the video that we have, the portal, what we consider to be a portal, and I'll get into the story if you'd like. But yes, the portal actually shrinks down as soon as the two guys, their heat signatures reappeared. It was a cube, and it shrunk down into a smaller cube, and then it moved and it disappeared. So we don't know for sure if that was even a portal. We call it a portal for lack of a better term. I mean, it could have been like a spaceship or something. I mean, I don't know. But you couldn't see it with your naked eye. You could only see it through equipment. Once again, just like those orbs. And this is our whole team. Like, nobody could see it. It was in the dark. And we were in the forest, the place that we researched called the Meadow. And okay, so this is interesting. This little tidbit I'm about to tell you. So that night that my son was having the orbs float around his head, and we have that on film. That never happened again, by the way. That was first and only time that ever happened. That was the night. Like, I went home early from our expedition that weekend from the Meadow. And that night that I was home, and the exact same time that my son had orbs floating around his head, my team went back out in the field that night and encountered this portal and had it on video. Okay, so I wasn't actually there when this happened. The whole team was there, but I went home because my son was so young. I couldn't be gone that many nights in a row. We're out at the Meadow, this place we call the Meadow. It's an undisclosed location here in the South. And we had a pretty big team out there that weekend. And so we usually go out and we'll disperse out into the Meadow at night. And this is a place that we've been researching for a while. And the way we found this area was we'd heard stories. Okay, so like what we like to do is, if we hear stories about a particular legend or lore, Okay, like a ghost road, for instance, or a witch, or pig man or goat man or something like that, Sasquatch, even dog men. We like to go to areas like that because if there's a local legend and lore of that area, there's usually a whole lot of activity there. Okay, that those stories don't come out of nowhere, and that's what we've found. So there was a pretty well-known local legend of a ghost road, okay, out there in cemeteries and stuff like that that were haunted. So some of the guys went and scouted it out a few years ago, a bunch of years ago, and decided, hey, this is a great place for us to do some research. And hiking out into the woods, like deep in the woods, they found like an open meadow, and noticed there was a lot of activity going on there. It was an area of high strangeness, and so we decided as a team. It's like my main team that I started off with branched off into another team, and then we have another team that branched off of that one. So like I said, I'm a member of 3 different teams that go out pretty often. But we went to this one place, and it's now become known as the Meadow. And they were okay. So the activity that goes on there, let me just give you a rundown. Sasquatch activity, possible dogman activity, orbs. Our equipment malfunctions to the point to where Bob Grumpy, one of the heads of one of my teams, he's out there with us all the time. Grumpy's out there and turned into a ball of light one night through a night vision, like a FLIR. Turned into a ball of light and like shot across the field. I know that sounds so weird. I mean, it is like so weird, the stuff that happens out there. He doesn't recall that, but he doesn't know how he got across the field so fast at some point. So yeah, like I said, so much weird stuff. We have disembodied voices. I mean, we do a lot of experiments out there. Like ST sessions and stuff like that we're communicating with. And I don't like ghost hunting. I'm so like, I don't do that anymore. I went home with orbs, so I don't like going home with orbs. Okay, so we're not doing that anymore. But yeah, we do some very interesting experiments out there, and I have been pinched and goosed on my bum and all sorts of stuff sitting out there in that field. So there's definitely more activity than just Bigfoot going on out there. But a lot of UFO activity.
Do you think the orbs have something to do with the ghost? Or are you correlating those two together?
Could be. Yeah, I think the orbs are a whole lot of different activity. I think the orbs encompass a bunch of different phenomenon, in my opinion. But like I said, I don't know. It just depends because there's so many different types of orbs. I mean, we've had orbs in the woods that have followed us around, followed my teammates around, and they turned into like triangular patterns and stuff and chase them out. I mean, it was very unnerving for the people. These are grown men, search and rescue guys, survivalists, military, former military, special forces guys. I mean, and they're getting freaked out by some of these orbs sometimes because they have an intelligence to them a lot of times. A matter of fact, in one of the spots that we go research, one of my teammates and we took a group of people up to the top of a mountain that we were researching, and they were friends of a friend. So they weren't professional, like, not that we're professional. We're not professional at all, Bigfooters. but they weren't like part of our team. And we took them up to the top of this mountain. And as we're walking down the mountain, we noticed a fog following us down the trail. And we would stop and the fog would stop. We would speed up, the fog would speed up. Okay. And it wasn't our imaginations. We were getting a horrible feeling about this fog. And enough to where we had to, my friend and I, we devised a game plan to get those people out of there quick, and us out of there too, because these national parks and stuff, and the place where we were with that, it was technically a national park up there, and you hear stories about the David Paulides missing 411 series, where they have these clusters of missing people. And a lot of the places that we researched, there are clusters of missing people out there. And so it makes you wonder, like, what was that fog? Were we imagining that, or was it trying to come and like envelop us and take us? I mean, it was just such an eerie feeling to have that fog chasing us like that. So it almost felt like it had a consciousness to it.
You
Okay.
talked
And
earlier about the orbs, and they formed a pattern, and they kind of ran the researchers out of an
mhm.
area. How did they run them out? What was it about the orbs' behavior that caused them to leave?
I think it was more of a gut instinct to get out of there. We don't stick around when there's danger like that. I mean, we can we can pump our chest out all we want and be like, oh, we're going to stand our ground with these things. But we've had so many experiences out there. We're out there to observe, not to taunt or anything like that. And we have to have a healthy dose of respect for the woods and what's in there. And so when it comes to stuff like those, we don't know how to fight ETs off. Okay. I'm just going to be very blunt. There's certain things out there where, if we feel we have to go with our gut, and if your gut is saying get out of there, then we get out of there. Yeah, we use our intuition. It's very heightened when we're out in the woods, when we're researching and stuff. So I think it was more of a gut instinct. Okay,
Do
those
you
guys
think
know when to stand their ground and when not.
do you think your psychic ability and that gut feeling is more in tune when you're in nature, like in such remote areas where you're away from like the normal hustle
Mhm.
bustle of cities and such?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I do. And there's no cell phone service out there. And I think that has a lot to do with dampening our psychic abilities and interfering with it. We have something called a telephone that we use now, and I think that kind of replaced like telepathy. Okay, there's a reason it sounds so similar, right? And our psychic abilities are so under attack from all the fluoride that's in our water, for our pineal glands being calcified and things like that, and the foods that we're eating are like junk, um, and a lot of the interference with the technology that we have, and let's just say just any kind of technology. I don't want to get political and into all that kind of stuff, but there's a lot working against our psychic abilities right now, and us as humans, like I think it's important for us to tap back into those, and to start utilizing those, because it's all about situational awareness, and it's important for us to be able to have that in our everyday lives. I mean, even going to the grocery store, we have to be able to pick up on people's intentions around us, and danger. Danger is a big one, and to know when to trust our gut. I mean, I always trust my gut at this point. If I get a bad feeling about something, I take action, to either get out of there or fight. So yeah, in the woods, it's way heightened, absolutely, because there's not all that interference out there.
Absolutely. In the meadow and other places across the country that I've heard about, sometimes there are these odd, I want to say, boxes that appear and then disappear. Have you heard of those?
Okay, that's what the cube was. Oh, so I got to get back to that story. I apologize. I went off on a tangent. Okay, so the cube. So my team was out there. They divided up into several small groups, and were placed all around the opening in the meadow. And so they're just out there observing, and just listening and looking for anomalies and things, anything that could be going on out there. And one of the guys on the team, actually, it's Dave Pardue. He's up in North Carolina. He's a pretty well known Bigfoot researcher from up there. Dave and Terry Wendell down from South Carolina, my friend Kristen, they were sitting together as a little team, at the opening of the meadow. And Dave was watching through his thermal camera the meadow, just looking out in an opening, in an open field, and he's noticed that there was a gigantic square, and he could only see it, like, it was dark, but he could see it, as like an outline, like a heat signature. And then he noticed that it was like more, not just a square, it was a cube. It looked as though it had windows and a door on it or something, like almost like a little house. Um, but like crosses, kind of like in the where the windows were on the sides of it. It was really odd. It just didn't seem normal. Okay, and so he thought he was seeing things, and passed his binocular over to Terry. And Terry looked, and he's like, okay, well, there's something really odd there, right? So they radioed over to some of the guys across the field, and they said, hey, well, y'all need to go check out this cube that just showed up in the middle of the field. And of course, everybody was like, whoa, what? Everybody starts paying attention to it at that point. And they sent, there were 3 gentlemen that walked over from the backside of the field over to check out this cube. And when they got up to it, they were being guided over to it over the radios. Kristen turned on her camera and started filming as these gentlemen walked over to this cube. And you can see the cube very clearly in this video. But it was starting to dissipate just a little bit by the time they got over to it. And you can see, all you can see are 3 heat signatures of like bodies walking over to it. One of the guys stayed back, and then 2 of the men walked up to the cube. They got over in front of it and they couldn't see it. Okay. But the people watching through their cameras with their thermal imaging cameras could see them, could see the cube and them. And so they guided them over to like the middle of it. And as they got over to the middle of it, their heat signatures disappeared. And this is an open field. They didn't go in the tree line. They were in an open field. Their heat signatures, which were completely white, disappeared. And they said it was like when they described what happened, because they didn't know they had gone into anything. When they described what happened, they said that it was like walking into a black velvet curtain. The temperature changed, the stars disappeared, and the vegetation on the ground changed from like grassy and kind of muddy and dirt to smooth, like a smooth ground. And these 2 guys are former military, Navy and Special Forces Army guys, okay, and trained in remote viewing, highly psychic, both of them, and very experienced in the field. They knew something was off. So and mind you, they still don't know they're inside anything, okay, because they're still just in the field. But everything kind of changed, but rather slightly. And so they backed out. And when they backed out, their heat signatures reappeared on the film. And then the cube shrunk down and then it moved and it disappeared. Okay, so that was the cube. And I had never heard anybody talk about a cube before, ever. I mean, this happened 5 years ago. Okay. And I just went public with my research about a year and a half ago. Almost 2 years ago now. It'll be 2 years almost 2 years. But I mean, I waited 10 years to even go public with any of my research. And honestly, we had signed NDAs, and we don't talk about a lot of this stuff, this research. But when the COVID thing hit, Trey wrote a book. And when he wrote a book about our research, I was able to talk about it publicly finally. I had never heard about these cubes other than just our experience with our team. And the first time I was asked to speak at a conference in 2021, and that was the first time I ever was public about my research. And I met a gentleman there who was speaking. His name is Barry Littleton. He's become one of my best friends now. And he was showing, he had a lot of contact with like ETs and stuff. And he was given a presentation, and his presentation included drawings of things he had seen in UFOs and spacecraft and stuff. And there was a cube just like the one that my team had experienced out in that field in his drawings. And so he and I started talking about it, and we started looking into portals, and my team had assumed that was a portal. Okay. And I've done so much like research on portals and things like that since then. Because it would lend credibility, let's just say, to an explanation as to like where some of these missing people are going, I think. And I think it's important for us to think outside the box, so to speak. Okay. I know there's a box, the cube, but to think outside of like conventional stuff. Like, first of all, people who are out in the field doing Bigfoot research. I mean, we've had Bigfoots kind of show up out of nowhere and disappear into thin air. Okay. Track lines. Sometimes the track lines just disappear into thin air. And some people say, well, they back up and put their feet into the footprints and stuff. Okay, well, they probably do that, but not every time. Okay. And we have track lines out there in the field that we're following of Bigfoots, and even vehicles of all things, like little vehicle tracks and stuff. Like you can't even get a vehicle into the meadow at all. It's way too far out in the middle of nowhere. And so it makes you wonder, like, are these portals? Is this something that an agency has that's using them? It didn't seem natural. Is this where the Bigfoots are coming in and out of our reality? I mean, I don't know. Um, but it's just another step in the research, and that's what my team does. We research. We don't have all the answers, but we're having these experiences, and it's quite dangerous too, actually, because both of those gentlemen got very sick after they went into the portal. One of them is passed away.
In what way was the illness manifest?
Okay, well, Bob, he got an aggressive form of cancer soon after, and he's still battling that to this day. And the other gentleman, he was young. He was only in his mid 50s, and he got a heart condition and had some heart issues and has passed away since then. Now we don't blame it on the cube, okay, but we have suspicions. We all have suspicions that it could have had something to do with some of their health problems, because they were both relatively pretty healthy
Do
before
you
this.
think, have you measured anything as far as,
Mhm.
electromagnetic fields out there or anything like that?
Every time, absolutely, we always do. Yeah, and there was a spike of radiation. We have our Geiger meters that we take out there. Anytime we have any kind of activity, from Bigfoot to disembodied voices to uh, UFOs, I mean, whatever's going on out there, orbs, there's a spike of radiation, and it's ever so slight. Usually, it's just a tiny little spike. But there was a spike of radiation there, and I mean, we continue to research the meadow, and we go every single time. I mean, we go out there almost every month or every couple months at least, to this area.
Do you think the radiation could be different inside the cube rather than outside the cube even?
Could have been, yeah. See, the gentlemen, they didn't take a measurement inside the cube because they didn't know they were in a cube. They didn't know. They just were standing there, and noticed that there's something just seemed off all of a sudden, and noticed the environment just slightly changed just a little bit. So, yeah, and thank goodness they stepped back out, like went backwards out of it, not knowing they were coming out of it, because if that thing had shrunk down and disappeared with them in it, I mean, I know that sounds weird, but it might have taken them somewhere. I mean, you just don't know, and that's why this research, like I said, this research is very dangerous. Um, you don't know what you're getting into, because I don't think a whole lot of people have done research, not just regular Bigfoot teams like ours, have done research and experienced things like these portals out there. I mean, we had to devise a plan, some protocol if we ever encountered a portal again, and it involves tying a rope around somebody, okay, and like pulling them, and it was really kind of funny because the guys were like, "All right, who has the best life insurance? Raise your hand." you know, who has the best medical insurance? And I would never volunteer to go into one myself because I have a child. I'm a single parent, and I'm not, until my son gets old enough to take care of himself. I'm not going to be that adventurous. Okay, I'm adventurous, but I'm not going into a portal if I don't have to.
Is there anything you want to end with?
The research that I do is ongoing, and we're out there doing some pretty cutting edge stuff, and it all started off with Bigfoot, and that's the important thing, is that we are at heart Bigfoot field research teams, but the direction that we went in, and it was just a natural kind of progression for us. We started seeing that there's so much more to the Bigfoot phenomenon, and there's so much other stuff going on out there if you just really pay attention to it, and it will take you down some rabbit holes. I got to warn everybody. The rabbit hole has turned into a portal for me. Okay. But yeah, it's, I don't know if we're ever going to get like full disclosure from, I do believe our governments are aware of Sasquatch, and especially in these national forests and stuff. I don't know if we're ever going to get the full truth on all that they know they're there, but we know they're there, and yeah, we're still in the process of trying to figure all this stuff out and just having a good time doing it.